today. So welcome, Jen, and thank you to everyone for participating in this session today.
Thank you, Amelia, and welcome. It's great to have, we've got nearly 90 people live with us at the moment. So thanks to all the Year 9 and 10 students who have tuned in this afternoon, any teachers that are also watching. It's really great to see so many young people interested in learning about careers in the construction industry. We've got some great presenters to chat with you today. So just a reminder, having a look at the slide there to connect to audio. If you've got any problems with your connection, type it in the chat box. Okay, so we're going to make a start. So I'd like to start with an official acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging who are following in the footsteps of those who came before. And we thank them for the opportunity to conduct CEA business on their lands. We'd also like to thank the Department of Education and Training. The Industry Immersion Experience program, which this webinar today is part of, aims to provide students in years 7 to 10 and also VCAL students in eligible government schools a chance to engage in a range of activities that provide you with an opportunity to learn more about the world of work and what's on offer out there in the workforce. We'd also like to thank the department for allowing us to use the WebEx platform today. So many students in the webinar this afternoon are probably familiar with WebEx. If not, this is a great introduction to how to use the platform. So this afternoon's webinar will focus on careers in construction and the construction technology industry. We've got a few main objectives, and you're going to hear from two fantastic speakers from the Metro Tunnel this afternoon. These speakers are going to provide you with lots of information about the many career opportunities available in construction. So I know when I hear the word construction, I think machines and digging and work outside. But what you're going to learn today, there's in fact a whole realm of other opportunities that people with lots of different skills have that are working for Metro Tunnel in particular, but also in other construction roles as well. You're going to get a really great insight into what is happening in our city. So in Melbourne, the Metro Tunnel are doing a number of amazing changes to make transport and getting around a lot easier. And you're really in for a treat today when you learn about all the amazing things that are coming our way in our CBD. So without any further ado, I am going to hand over to Shan and Sherida. But I just want to remind everybody that we do have a Q&A function. So although the session, your mics are muted, we really do want to encourage you to ask questions. So type your questions in the chat box and we will be able to answer those questions along the way. This is an opportunity to find out what you want to know. A couple of people have already asked how long the session will go for. You should be finished within 60 minutes, so hopefully you'll be able to stick around for the whole presentation. We do have a survey at the end, which we'd love you to complete so we can find out how we can improve and make the project better moving forward, because there will be a number of other webinars running in term 4, which hopefully students can come along to as well. So over to you, Shan and Sherida. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jen. My name's Shan, and together with Cherida, we're going to be giving you an overview about the Metro Tunnel project and also focusing on different careers that are available in infrastructure and construction as well. So to begin with, I will just give you an overview of the project itself, and then Cherida will talk about the special features and benefits and focus on job opportunities in that industry. Thank you. So to give you an overview, we need to understand what's been happening in Victoria as to why we need such a large infrastructure project, why we're building it, and how we're going to build it as well. So Victoria's population is rapidly growing. Melbourne is already at over 5 million people and is going to end up being a bigger city than Sydney. When we look at where the growth is actually taking place, though, we can see that the growth is happening happening on the outskirts of the city where those larger circles are. So particularly in the north and south, but also in the west. So really happening outside of the middle of Melbourne. Thanks. Now, the interesting part of that is to overlay that growth of what's happening with jobs. And once again, the bigger the circle represents the bigger growth, and the majority of jobs are going to be happening in the middle, in the city where Melbourne is. That means we've got lots of people living outside with jobs happening in the middle. So people need to be moving back and forth into and out of the city. So lots of journeys will need to take place. We might be having more urban hubs with our post-COVID world, but either way, we're going to be having lots of people needing to move around our city. Thank you. So coupled with our population growth, we've also had an increase in the number of people that actually take trains to get around. So we can see that there's a lovely curve going up and up and up, showing that increase in growth. And if we have a look in a little bit more depth, we can see that in 2010 was where we really started to get a spike. So more people were starting to catch the trains. If we start to have a think about that and sort of analyse why that may be, there can be quite a few different reasons. Firstly, because there's just more people on the road and more cars on the road, people might have got sick of dealing with traffic every single day and decided that the train is a less stressful way to get around. They might be able to read their newspaper or a book or look at their phone and just relax and not have to worry about dealing with traffic. Fuel prices also started to go up, so to travel by car became more expensive as well as stressful. And also people have become more environmentally conscious and more aware. So there's less carbon emissions that way as well. Thanks, Jen. So when we're talking about infrastructure and our rail projects, the last major project that we had was the original Melbourne City Loop, which you'll be familiar with. So that was built back in the 1980s, so quite a while ago. It's a great system, but it's actually at capacity. We can't physically fit any more trains into the system. So you might have already experienced, if you're on your own train line and you're having a nice journey into the city, you might come to an area that we call a pinch point. So in particular at Richmond or North Melbourne, you might have had to sit in your train for around 20 minutes waiting for a spot for your train to get into the city loop. So it's already at capacity. So what we have already, it works well, but we can't fit any more trains on. We really can't start to fit more people on either. So we needed to find a solution for that, which leads us to the Metro Tunnel project itself. So when we have a look at it, the overall key facts about it are that we're building 2 twin tunnels, so an underground system. They're going to be 9 kilometres long with 5 new stations. So they'll actually go under the existing Melbourne City Loop, but there will be an opportunity to interchange at our 2 city stations to swap lines. So if we look up the top, we have Arden, which is going to be near North Melbourne, and it's going to be a whole urban renewal project. So a whole new suburb will be created. We then move along to Parkville, which is our health and university precinct. So we have the University of Melbourne, the Children's Hospital, Peter Mac Cancer Centre, Royal Melbourne Hospital, lots of different hospitals there. So when you're all off to uni, you might be getting off at Parkville Station. And then we have our 2 city stations. So State Library, where obviously we're going to find the State Library, but also another university, RMIT. And then we move across to the Town Hall, which is very close to Flinders Street Station. So you'll be able to swap stations. And also there's St Paul's Cathedral as well. And then we move along St Kilda Road, which is a major tram precinct or tram corridor. There's lots of offices out there, so lots of people needing to travel up there for jobs, but also we have the Shrine of Remembrance. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Jen. So not only will we be adding a whole new line, so freeing up capacity that way, but adding this in will actually free up the capacity on existing lines. So if we have a look at that pale blue line, that's going to add up, which is our Cranbourne, Pakenham, Sunbury line, which will be interconnecting with our metro tunnel. The capacities, the gains are quite large. So 60% for Sunbury, 45% for Pakenham and Cranbourne, and then other lines as well. So for the Upfield line, we've got a 71% increase in capacity. So we'll be able to have more trains more often, moving more people around through our city. Thanks. And another aspect, as well as having our increase in capacity, is that there's lots of environmental benefits as well. So it's been calculated that the Metro Tunnel will take 50,000 car trips off the road in Melbourne each day. So a significant environmental benefit too. Okay, so I'm going to pass over to Cherida, who will now talk about the key project features and also focus on different careers available as well.
Thank you, Sian. Everyone hear me? All right, so you may have heard about high capacity trains, and they're the types of trains that are going to run along this line. Key feature of them is, unlike a normal train where you can't move between carriages, with these trains you can get on and you can walk from one end to the other, hopefully finding yourself a seat. But they're also better designed to allow for people to bring things like bikes on board the train as well, and they will be longer. So the new platforms are being constructed so they're a little bit longer, which will allow us to run as train patronage increases, more carriages, more space, because they can hold about 1,500 people at a time, these trains. So they're going to make a difference to how many people we can carry at a time. Next slide. All right. Another key feature is that we're changing the signalling system for this line as well. So this one's a bit of interest of those of you who are into sort of automatic vehicles and sort of Wi-Fi technology. At the moment, the trains run on what's called a fixed block system. And that means that they have to leave a certain amount of distance between them all the way along the line. Now, if you think about it, it's like a piece of string strung with beads. You can only fit so many beads on the line if you've got to have spaces in between the beads. So we can't add more trains because there's no room on the line. But with our new signalling system that we're going to bring in for this line, the trains will talk to one another and talk to the train line itself, constantly monitoring in real time, which will allow the trains to run almost sort of in sync. And in fact, you know, the driver of one train might be able to see the tail of the train in front. They'll be able to run closer together because they're running in sync together. And that means that we can actually fit more trains on the line. It's not a question of being able to go faster, it's just being smarter, all right, so that we can fit more trains in, which means we can carry more people. Okay. Whoops, just go back one. Yes. Feature that will be at the stations itself is platform screen doors. So the train will stop at exactly the same spot on the platform every time. So all you need to do is stand on the little standing area and you'll know that the train doors will open right in front of you and then in and onto the carriage. So it's definitely a safety feature because we've all heard those terrible stories of people who've fallen off of platforms or prams that have rolled off of them. So definitely a feature that's for safety, but also it has an impact on the environment within the station as well. So those of you who've stood at Melbourne Central or Parliament Station and then felt the breeze as a train approaches and all the dust, that is mitigated by having these platform screen doors, and it also makes it easier for us to preserve the internal environment of the station too. So it's easier to heat and cool the station, making them more comfortable places to dwell for a start. So that'll again be a feature of the new Metro Tunnel stations. Okay, you can see these behind Sian and I as well. These are the heroes of our project. tunnel boring machines. They're the ones that do the heavy lifting and will cut the main lines for us. And what a tunnel boring machine is it's a gigantic mechanical drill. And it moves through the earth a bit like a mechanical worm, chews up the earth, spits it out the back, but also as it goes, it lines the tunnel as well. Because you've all had that experience where maybe you tried tunneling in your backyard when you were a little bit younger. You're like, oh, we could tunnel under the fence or whatever. We all did that when we were kids. And what tends to happen is your tunnel falls in behind you. Not good, not good. So as we dig the tunnel, the gantry on the back of this machine actually loads lining into place to create the sealed concrete tunnel behind. And the people who work on these machines, it's not something you go to uni and get a degree in. Mostly these people have worked in construction for a long time. Maybe they've got licenses for using diggers and cranes and heavy equipment. And then they get additional qualifications as they move through their career in working on the tunnel boring machines. So, you think about a construction job and what you might be doing. This is something that you could target to work towards in your career, because these tunnelling projects aren't going to stop. We've got the same problem as everybody all over the world. We need more roads and we need more train lines, but we can't fit them in because we've got a lot of development all over our city, and the best places to put them are already covered in houses and shops. So the solution, of course, is to go underground, to remove that infrastructure out of the way, because underground it also has a much clearer path too. But the whole world's got this problem, so we are having to train up our own tunnelling engineers here in Australia to manage the demand for these types of projects. Next slide. So we've got 4 of these tunnel boring machines, and they're all named after women. And it's a little bit of a tradition, because in the old days when people were working in mines and using explosives, they had a special patron saint that they would pray to and they would leave offerings for, and that was St. Barbara. Now, we don't rely on a patron saint to keep us safe anymore. Safety is a huge aspect of our project. We have a gigantic team who are committed to ensuring that we have no accidents, and they monitor constantly the use of protective equipment and all of the safety procedures that we have to put in place. But the tradition continues in that we still like to name our tunnel boring machines after women, and it still happens all over the world, which I think is really neat. So ours are named after groundbreaking women, because that seemed appropriate for our tunnel boring machines, including Joan Kerner, who was the first female Premier of Victoria. Meg Lanning, she's our only living TBM person, so she's the Australian cricket captain. And Alice Aberford, who was a very highly decorated wartime nurse, and Millie Peacock, who was the very first female MP here in Victoria. So there's a red, a blue, a green and a yellow. You can actually track them on our website. We've got a tracker for those of you who are into your construction technology. You can see where they are. But for instance, Joan has just finished tunnelling the first part of her section and broken through, and she's sitting in the space that we have created for the Parkville station. She's being, refitted and maintained, and then she will start digging again from Parkville and head into the city. Okay. This is the other mega piece of equipment, and I know, apologies to those of you who've heard this before, but I always think that this road header looks like something out of Lord of the Rings. It looks like the sort of piece of equipment that the orcs would bring to break down your castle. This road header, similar thing, so it has this pine cone head that spins and grinds away at the rock. And we use this not so much for cutting tunnels, although this will cut the tunnel between State Library and Town Hall through the middle of the city. We use it more for creating the shapes we need, the caverns or the caves that we need underground. to house the actual stations themselves. Because when you saw the tunnel borer, you can see it's a drill. It drills a straight line. It's not the machine you need for cutting shapes. So this is the piece of equipment that we use for doing more of, I guess you'd call it the sculpting of the spaces that will house the stations. Okay. All right, let's have a look at our individual stations and some of the, I guess, the special work that we have to do at each of them individually, because each of our stations poses different problems, challenges, and opportunities. And that's where you get the diversity of careers that you can have on a big construction project like this. So your teacher sent you to this seminar today and you were like, I don't want to work in construction. I don't want to wear boots and get dirty. Well, let me tell you, there's a whole range of different roles in construction, and it might suit you better than you think. So here we've got a picture of the Arden construction site. And as Sian pointed out, this one's in North Melbourne. It's not far from the North Melbourne home footy ground. This area used to be a big industrial area where they had meatworks and leather factories and printing. And it had gone dead. The industries had all left. And what you were left with was a big open space of land, less than 4 kilometres from the middle of the city, going to waste. By putting a station here, we're basically going to create a new suburb, and that suburb will probably be called Arden. All right? On top of the station, we will build apartments, shops, a community, basically a new place to live. So here you have the notion of building a station, but with a whole new suburb on top. So it's really almost a once-in-a-generation opportunity, the idea of building a new suburb so close to the city and starting from scratch with a suburb. So the sorts of people who've got a big investment in terms of career here are designers, town planners, all right? The people who monitor how do we move around our suburb? How can we make it more walkable? How can we make it better for people using bicycles? Because these people are living close to the city. They're less likely to have cars. So how can we ensure that their suburb is really user-friendly for the type of people who will eventually live here? So that's where you get into careers like, yes, architecture, designing these new homes, but also environmental planning, town planning, studies of flow and how we move around the places that we live. How do we get effective lighting so that these places are also safe at night? Because you don't want to create a new suburb that's kind of scary to live in. So that's what's going to be happening at Arden, and it'll be a popular place to live because you're basically one station stop from Melbourne University and the hospitals. I suspect we'll have quite a lot of doctors and nurses living here, but also just 2 stops from the city itself. So, you know, it's a fantastic opportunity. Next one. Oh, somebody asks me how fast do the tunnel borers spin, and I should have mentioned that when we were back there. So you saw that big disc front. It's about 7.2 metres wide. So you can see the one still behind myself and Sian. She's got Meg Lanning behind her. The front spins about 6 times a minute. So it's not something that spins really, really fast. You know, like a whisk or your kitchen bench milkshake maker. It actually moves quite slowly. So imagine it grinding. That's what it does. It grinds away under pressure at the dirt and the rock, turning it into rubble that's then pumped out the back. And it can do about 10 to 15 metres a day. Depends on the rock conditions, all right? It can do about 10 to 15 metres a day. And again, behind it, it's lining the tunnel as well. All right, so there's the station entrance at Arden. And the look and feel of this station, the design of it, is supposed to reflect the history of the place where it is. So, this used to be an industrial area with red brick factories. So we tried to replicate that in the look and the feel of the station so that it blends in and maintains some kind of link to the heritage of the area as well. It's got to look like it belongs. And so that's where people like the heritage experts advise what they would like to see, where we try to reclaim some of the materials that we might have dug up or demolished and use them in the final project as well. So it'll have a bit of a look and a feel to match the way that North Melbourne looks. Okay, we'll move forward. All right, Parkville Station. So this station sits underneath Grattan Street, which runs through the middle of Melbourne University. So it's a really major thoroughfare for the university. And also it will have entrances near the hospitals as well as along Grattan Street to the university. And this is an area that's needed a train station for a very long time. Sian mentioned that we've got these really important medical facilities there. The only way to get to them at the moment is by car and by tram. So with the station there, it's just going to make it a lot easier for people to access stuff that they really need. Like if you are having cancer treatments, let's make it as easy as possible for you to be able to access that help that you need. But one of the interesting parts of the project at Parkville is because we're underneath hospitals and a university, there's a lot of really sensitive research and monitoring equipment in these buildings. So our people have had to work very closely with, we call them stakeholders, the people who are impacted by what we do, the stakeholders that we have at the hospital and in the university, to make sure that some of their very sensitive monitoring equipment isn't disturbed by the work that we're doing. And that involves having sensors and constant tracking. It involves negotiating with the people at the university and the hospital when we'll actually be doing the work. So we've scaled back a little bit of the work recently. We had to reschedule some things because the hospital, the Royal Melbourne Hospital, is one where a lot of the COVID patients need to access. So there's just been a little bit of carefulness about allowing these organisations to go about their business while we build. And the people who do that work aren't engineers and they're not electricians, but they're people who've perhaps got a background in business studies or governance or politics, and they work with those stakeholders to ensure that we build and we achieve our tunnel and we get it done on time, but we don't disturb really important things that are going on around the city at the same time. Can we move on? So this is Parkville Station, all right? And actually it's quite a good point to illustrate one of the topics I brought up at the last session in response to a question. And that is about the stations themselves needing to be, I guess, best practice in terms of what a station can be. We've got access to a lot of technology that allows us to build better stations than we have in the past. And one aspect is something called biophilic design. And biophilic design is about trying as much as possible to bring natural light into buildings and to bring sort of carbon neutrality into buildings, and a better, more healthy atmosphere. The problem with an underground station is if it's badly designed, it can be like sort of going down into a public toilet. I mean, you really don't want that. It's dank and dark and pokey. So we try to get as much natural light into the spaces as we can. And also, if we get natural light, we tend to get better environmental controls as well in terms of temperature. And also, if we can get some green stuff down there too, if we can get some planting in there, it's going to make the spaces more attractive and also more livable. Okay, next slide. So here's the concourse at Parkville. This will be a very long station because it goes all the way along Grattan Street and then pops up on the other side of Royal Parade. Next. Okay, after Parkville, the train turns south and rolls underneath Swanson Street. and comes to State Library Station, which will be on the corner of Swanson and Latrobe Streets. So diagonally opposite the State Library. And if you're sharp at the moment, you're going, what, hang on. Oh, I think you've lost me in terms of my face, but I can all still hear me. Thumbs up for hearing? Cool. About the same spot we lost it last time. Okay, I'll keep talking. So you're probably going, but there's already a station there. There's the Melbourne Central Station. And this is where we get to this point where we're not creating necessarily new stations because there's a need for one at that spot. We're doing it to create a new line through the city. And with a new line, 3 of the busiest trains go on that line, Sunbury, Pakenham, Cranbourne. And that means they're not in the loop, which means there's more room for the other lines that are using that loop. And that's where we get those capacity building advantages. So this line actually will allow you to connect. So you'll be able to get off the train or on the train at State Library and walk underground and connect up with the other lines. So it just gives you that ability to change lines if you need to. But we're actually going underneath the city loop. So at this point, we're about 28 metres underneath the city. So when we're tunnelling and you're digging, you won't feel it above. We'll often have people like, oh, but the tunnel boring machine's coming through and it will shake up my house and make my plaster fall off the wall. No, it's far too deep down for that. And it's far too deep down for really finding any archaeological finds either, because at that depth, you're really into sheer rock. So there you can see the profile of it running along Swanson Street past RMIT University and towards the State Library, which is just off screen there. Okay. Next. So here's the construction site on the corner of Swanson Street and Latrobe Street, and there'll be an entrance there. And what it'll be a bit like the Melbourne Central entrance, where you walk in off the street and there'll probably be a concourse with shops, and then you'll go down into the station itself. Next slide. And again. All right, so here you can see what the concourse looks like. So in other words, the platforms where people will move. So remember when I told you about the road header? The road header is the machine that will cut that central archway, because the tunnel boring machine's great in a straight line, but can't do the fiddly work. And this station has been designed to sort of evoke the look of the dome of the State Library. So to reflect that piece of architecture that is nearby. So the people involved with doing that kind of work would be architects and designers, but there'd also be people looking at how do we move all of our passengers around the station. We need to have good flow. We need to have good barriers. We need a pathway that works. There's nothing worse than a poorly designed station where people are pooling and crowding and getting in each other's way. And then there are empty spaces where nobody is. So that's all about sort of interior design. And I know a lot of you were probably watching shows like The Block and thinking, I'd love to be an interior designer and do homes and design. But think bigger, think bigger, because the people who do design for major constructions and buildings, you're leaving a lasting legacy here. I mean, the people who work on that will be able to bring their children, their grandchildren to see the impact that they had on the city. You're creating something that's going to be a legacy. So, whatever your skills are, think bigger, because there may be more ways to apply them than the one that appears most obvious. Okay, let's move down to Town Hall. All right, so Town Hall Station is on the corner of Swanson and Collins Street. And you may remember we used to have a city square there, and it had a graffiti board and a water wall, all right? So we've taken over that space, and you can show the next image, what's there now. Maybe you've walked past this. don't panic. That's not the station. Right? We actually have quite a lot of people contact us and go, that is the ugliest station in the world. It's not the station. That's actually a thing called an acoustic shed. And an acoustic shed sits as a temporary structure on top of your construction site so that you can contain all of the noise and the dust and the light from construction within that, enabling you to keep on building whilst the city goes on around you as best that it can. Oh, I've had somebody ask me how big is a road header. A tunnel boring machine from one end to the other is about 120 metres long, all right? But you can see in the pictures above us just the front end of it. Most of the 120 metres is what we call the gantry, which is like an open area where the workers move backwards and forwards and put in the panels. A road header is a smaller piece of equipment, but still a very big unit, and that would probably be about 40 metres long. All right. Can we see inside the acoustic shed? So here we are inside. So this is where we're working. Because remember, as well as digging the tunnels, we've got to dig access points from the surface. And that's actually the noisiest part of the work, when we're going down from the surface to create the entrance points down into the station, you know, where the escalators will sit, basically the ways down under there. So the acoustic shed allows us to work all day. Can you go back a slide, Jen, so we can see the one with the Western Hotel? Okay, I just want to go back to this slide because that building behind the acoustic shed is a 4-star hotel. So imagine if you owned a 4-star hotel in the very middle of Melbourne and you heard that we were going to be constructing for the next 5 years. You wouldn't be very happy. You also wouldn't be very happy that this gigantic concrete box is now right in front of your hotel. So the views, shall we say the view has been compromised? Somewhat. So they're another stakeholder. So a bit like our people up at the museum, up at the university and the hospitals, but they've got a different set of problems. They're a big hotel that needs to keep working whilst we're doing our construction. It's going to be fab for them when we're finished because there'll be a station right on their doorstep. But in between, how are they going to keep running their business? So we actually have business support teams who work with the people in the hotel to work out how can we best minimise what those impacts are going to be. So if we move forward a couple of slides, I'll move on. Okay, so there'll be another entrance at Federation Square as well. So that's the acoustic shed, but that's a shot from above. All right, and you can see on the top this amazing mural. So the Metro Tunnel project has a creative program where we make the most of the structures that we have to put around our sites to try and turn them into something a bit more positive than chain link fences and concrete walls. So we have a creative program and we actually go out to the arts community and say, who would like to create artwork for these spaces? Whilst we're digging here, these things will be in place for 3 or 4 years. We want to make them attractive. So we actually commission artwork from local artists, obviously, and there are people who work in that creative program to manage all of that, the cost of it, commissioning the artists, working with them and supporting them. So who'd have thought in construction, you could actually have a role in a creative program designed to add value whilst the project is going on. And the mural on top there was designed by Pat Perry, who is a world-renowned street artist, and he came out and worked with 6 local artists to paint that. I think it took them about 2 weeks to paint it, and really nobody can see it but the people in the Western Hotel. But it certainly makes them a lot happier to be able to say to guests, you can have a room with a view of the mural rather than you can have a room with a view of a concrete roof. So there's an example of some of the broader work that we do. Our project is $11 billion, $11 billion, all right? So yes, we need engineers, electricians, tunnel boring experts, but there's also a lot of people who manage the project more broadly. They manage contracts, so definitely we have a whole team of lawyers. They manage the finances. This is public money. You bet we have to manage the finances. So there's people in the accounting teams ensuring that we buy stuff really upfront, really fairly, that all of our contracts are properly managed. HR teams to ensure how we, to manage putting people on the job as we need them. It's a whole range of different roles in what is essentially a construction project. Next one. And again, because we've seen those. So there's Town Hall Station. You can also see it running underneath St Paul's Cathedral there. So we have to work with those stakeholders too, because that's a really important Melbourne asset. And in fact, opposite St Paul's Cathedral, where one of the station entrances will be, we did an archaeological dig because that site was, I guess you'd call it ground zero for the settlement, the European settlement of Melbourne. So when Batman arrived and established a village, that spot there behind Young and Jackson's Hotel, directly opposite where St Paul's Cathedral is now, that's where the first European settlement was developed. And so when we had cleared the buildings there that we needed to demolish to build the station, we actually had an archaeological project running for about 6 to 8 months, digging down and uncovering the layers of Melbourne settlement and recovering artefacts that went all the way back to 1838 and the very first people who were there. I believe they found about 1 million artefacts. That was something that we'd never be able to do again because now the station's in that site. And the insights that it gives us into how we lived and our history are really, really important. So who'd have thought on a construction project, we are in fact very big employers of archaeologists. Got an interest in history and science? Construction projects may be your best opportunities for getting access to cleared sites where you can do an investigation and uncover some pretty amazing things about our past. I go down another one. So here's the Town Hall Station. Again, there'll be a walkway here where you can connect with Flinders Street. So if you don't want to, you don't have to cross that terrible crossing at Flinders Street and Swanson Street anymore. You'll be able to walk underground and connect up between those two sites. Pop up at Collins Street or into Grave Street if you want. And next. So the last station on the line, if you're going from north to south, is Anzac, and that is near the Shrine down on St Kilda Road. This area, you probably haven't done much down in this part of the world unless you've gone to the Botanic Gardens or to the Shrine. But in fact, there's an awfully large number of office buildings down there. It's all office work. And people to get to that area at the moment, they don't have much choice. There's not much parking down there. So they tend to come in on the train, get off at Flinders Street and catch a tram. And the tram trip, given that it's only about 1.5 kilometres, that tram trip can take 15 to 20 minutes. So having a station down there to service that part of the busy working community is important. But this train station will also be a tram interchange. So there's the acoustic shed. And if we go to the next picture, you can see the station itself. And then inside the station, the next image. So notice this station's quite shallow. And that's because people will be doing quick interchanges there. The idea is that you might come up on your tram from St Kilda or Malvern or Glen Iris or any of what are the other trams that go through that area. Get off the tram at Anzac Station, switch to a train, and you could be at State Library or Parkville in 1 or 2 stops. As Sean mentioned, the St Kilda Road Swanson Street tram line is the busiest tram line in the world. But that is not something to be proud of, because the busiest tram line in the world also makes it the slowest and the clumsiest. So if we can reduce some of the pressure on those tram lines by popping people onto trains, it'll add a lot of flow to how our city works more broadly. Okay, so that station will be important. So when's it going to be completed? 2025. Right, so you're sitting there going, 2025? I won't even have finished university by then. The good news is it's just the start. So at the beginning of our session, we said to you, we've got population growth and we need to expand our train lines. But this is not something that's going to stop after the metro tunnel's built. In fact, I'll let you in on a secret. At Parkville Station, when they've done the excavation at Parkville Station and dug out the space for the station box, they've actually dug 2 nodes to allow for a future tunnel to come through for a second line to be added to that station. One that may come through from sort of Hurstbridge, Clifton Hill, Parkville, and down to Fisherman's Bend. So cross over our line. Well, we can't stop adding to our infrastructure as we continue to grow, because, you know, it's an ongoing commitment that we need to make to build a city that works in ways that we need it to work. And even for us, once we finish the metro tunnel, we'll be working hard on the next project, which is already in the planning stages, and that is the Melbourne Airport link, which will in fact use metro tunnel stations. It'll go out through Sunshine and the metro tunnel link to create a train link to our airport. So these infrastructure projects are going to be the pattern of the future. So I guess my last comment to you is, you need to think about, what do I enjoy doing? What am I skilled at? What do I naturally gravitate towards? That's where you pitch your career. There's no good jobs for people who don't do what they like, because they're usually not very good at it. So definitely think about what you're good at, what floats your boat. But the tip from me to you is, also have your eyes open for which industries offer the best opportunity. Because let's just say you do become an accountant, all right? Your work will be largely similar, whether you're being an accountant for a hospital or for a school or for a shopping centre or any kind of business. But keep your eyes open for which industries are expanding. And the reason you're having sessions about the construction industry is definitely the trend is that construction is a growing area. And by getting experience and working in the construction industry, in other words, sort of applying for jobs in those spaces, is once you have experience in that area, then the other construction people will want you too. And so your opportunities might be better. So it's quite a sophisticated point to be thinking about, because you guys are in year 9 and 10. But just pop this in your back pocket for when you're a little bit older and think, it's not just what I do and being really good at it. It's also about being smart and targeting, where do I see the growing opportunities? Because that's where you'll have the best career prospects. And a project like ours, we have room for almost everybody. We have media and communications people. Somebody designed all these slides for us today, right? And that's somebody who has skills in graphic design. So maybe you're sitting there going, well, I want to do art. Why would I work in construction? But in fact, when you're doing big projects that take a really long time, you need to keep communicating with people about what's going on. And often the best way to do that is through photography, videography. Go and look on our website and see how many videos we have. And imagery. We also use a lot of social media, right? So we have an entire team of media people and people who work maintaining our Facebook presence, our Instagram, right? So construction offers the most obvious job opportunities, but also there's broader work for people with a whole host of skills in this area. And if you'd asked me 5 years ago, would I be working on a construction project? I would have laughed myself sick. So there you go. Yeah. Now, folks, has anyone got any questions that we haven't answered yet? Jen, is there anything that people have asked that I can follow up on?
Somebody asked, how long do the machines take to grind the tunnels? Which I think is an interesting question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I told you that Joan had just broken through at Parkville. And I was listening to a presentation the other day, and they were saying that she was managing between 9 and 15 metres a day. So it depends a little bit on the conditions that they encounter, you know, what type of rock, how fast she can go. And remember, she's lining behind her as she goes as well. So, yeah, they do about, between 9 and 15 metres a day. So with the tunnelling, with the 4 of them going, we've pretty much got 2 full years of full-on tunnelling to get the main train lines built. And we've been at it for about 10 months. Yeah.
Wow. Great. And I think most of the other questions have been covered off. So that's great. So we might just move on to your next slide.
Okay. So, yeah, if you're a little bit sparked up, this is our website. We've got quite a few activities, videos, bits of information. And from there, you can also go to the broader Metro Tunnel site where we've got even more, you know, for the people love this stuff. TBMs are just the best thing ever. So this is our education site. A shout out to any of the teachers. You can book an independent session with Sian and myself here as well. Just follow the links for teachers to bookings at HQ. We're doing remote sessions as well at a time that suits you. So you can also do that. Have a chat to us about what you'd like to explore. And to the students on that education site, I've got a page, Meet Our Graduates, where I've got videos there featuring 5 different grads who work with us. So when I say grads, they're new graduates. So we have a graduate program and people get rotated through different parts of our business. And you can see, I've got an engineer, but I've also got a lawyer, a land planning and environment person, community engagement, and a social media specialist there. So you can have a little look at their stories about what they do on our project. And I've got a shout out there. Would you like to see another job featured? Let me know if you are curious, because okay, we don't employ many surgeons. Don't think we've got any of them, but we've definitely got health and safety reps. So people who are working in science, or we've got environmentalists. So we've definitely got those people on the project. So sometimes it's about thinking left field. I always like the challenge of trying to think, what are you interested in? Have we got a job for you? I think we might. And then some of the other resources on our site as well.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you, Cherida. That was a fantastic overview of all those many opportunities for employment in the construction industry. It's been so great to see so many students in the room today. We had 240 people here today. So I know I've learnt a lot. I've been madly jotting down all the careers that Cherida and Sian discussed in the presentation, and I certainly didn't think that people with creatives could be working in construction, designing buildings, looking at the interiors, the landscapes, thinking about photographers, people working in social media. What else have I got written down here? Environmental specialists, making sure that the landscape and the land is protected. Archaeologists, people interested in history, all these different types of skills that are really required to work in the construction industry. And I think when Cherida said that thinking about what industries there's going to be a lot of growth and opportunities for employment is a very, very good tip when you're thinking about what you might like to do after school. So if you've got really great people skills, there is roles in communications and PR within construction. There is all of these different roles that have been discussed today, and it's a great opportunity for you to look more into the construction industry, learn about what else is out there for you. And I thank our two presenters today. You've really provided us all with great insight and overview. So thank you to Metro Tunnel. Thank you to Sian and Sherida. And
it's been a pleasure.
We've also got some of our own resources that students might like to take a look at, which hopefully you'll have a look at with your teachers at some point. But these are free resources that provide overviews on not only the construction and technology industry, but also various other industries as well. So take a look at this website if you have the time after this session. Have a look at some of the interviews we have with specialists in construction from Metro Tunnel and also from various other industries. So if you've got to the end of the session and think, oh, maybe construction isn't for me, but it sparked an interest in learning more about careers and thinking more about your pathway opportunities, this is a really great starting point. So it's 2:28 now, which brings us to the end of the session, but we would love everybody to complete the survey. So in the chat box is a link to a survey, and we'd really love student feedback and any teachers in the room on what you enjoyed about today's session, what you'd like to see in future sessions, because it's very exciting. This is the first presentation of this type that we've done. So next term, we will be offering more presentations around careers, and we hope that students can come along. And we'd love any feedback to make them better and bigger for next term. So thank you to everybody who has participated again. Thank you again to our presenters. It's been really fantastic and really interesting. And I hope everybody has learnt something new. I've learnt lots of new things. And thanks again. And we hope to see you at another CEAV Industry Immersion Experience webinar sometime in next term. Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye.
So the link is just in the chat. I'd like to complete that survey.